So I will be talking about physical development in early childhood. So to start off with growth, as far as that goes in this period of life, children are growing at a really rapid pace. So for example, if you want to have fun with a child at the beginning of this period, ask them to take their left hand and use it to go over their head to touch their right ear. They actually can't do it. Their body proportions are so they're still kind of built like an infant with a very large head, short appendages. But by the time the child is around 5 years old, though, their arms will have stretched, their head has become smaller in proportion to the rest of their growing bodies, and they can accomplish the task easily because of these changes. Children between the ages of 2 and 6 tend to grow about 3 inches in height each year and gain about 4 to 5 pounds in weight each year. The average 6-year-old weighs about 46 pounds and is about 46 inches in height. The 3-year-old is very similar to a toddler, like I said, with a large head, large stomach, short arms, and short legs. But they begin to start losing some of their baby fat during early childhood, and they become, more like a child. By around age 3, children typically have all 20 of their primary teeth, and around age 4, they may even have 20/20 vision. Many children take a daytime nap until they're about 4 or 5 years old, and sleep between about 11 and 13 hours at night. That sounds pretty great to me. By the time the child reaches about age 6, torsos lengthened, body proportions are more so like adults, but it should be noted that these growth patterns are seen where children receive adequate nutrition. Studies from many countries support the assertion that children tend to grow more slowly in lower socioeconomic status areas, and so they are smaller. This growth rate is slower than that of infancy, and is accompanied by a reduced appetite between the ages of 2 and 6. This change can sometimes be surprising to parents and can lead to the development of poor eating habits. As far as nutritional concerns go, according to the CDC, 1 in 5 American children between the ages of 2 and 5 are overweight or obese. So that's really important to take a look at. So, making sure that children have whole fruits and vegetables instead of just juices, and getting them active are just some of the recommendations that are given. Parents should also, milk is very important for calcium, but they should avoid giving children too much milk, as calcium can actually interfere with the absorption of iron in the diet as well. So preschoolers can actually experience iron deficiencies if not given well-balanced nutrition. Caregivers also need to keep in mind that they're setting up taste preferences at this time in life. So if children are, accustomed to high fat, very sweet, salty flavors, they actually may have trouble eating foods that have more subtle flavors like fruits and vegetables. So basically, trying to make the American diet a little better is important. So lack of a healthy diet can lead to obesity during this stage and future stages. So then to kind of look at brain maturation, so early childhood is actually marked by one of the most critical and intensive periods of brain development throughout the human lifespan. So the brain is about 75% of its adult weight by 2 years of age. By age 6, it's about 95% of its adult weight. The development of myelin and the development of new synapses through the process of synaptic pruning continues to occur in the cortex, and as it does, we see a corresponding change in what the child is capable of doing. Overproduction and pruning of synapses occurs first in the regions of the brain that produce sensory information, then in association areas involving like higher level processes like working memory, attention, and planning. Healthy brain development during this period facilitates optimal cognitive development and lays the foundation for future cognitive and academic accomplishments. I also want to point out the greater development in the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain behind the forehead that, as we know, helps us think, strategize, and control emotions, and makes it increasingly possible to control emotional outbursts and understand how to play games. So if you think about like a 4 or 5-year-old child approaching a game of soccer, okay, funny scenario, right? So chances are every move would be a response to the commands of a coach standing nearby, calling things like, run this way, now stop, look at the ball, kick the ball, look at the goal, things like that. But when the child's not being told what to do, they're probably distracted by a flower or a dog across the street, things like that. So understanding the game, thinking ahead, and coordinating movements improves with practice and myelinization. In the memory domain, children should acquire the ability to encode information in their memory and access long-term stores over increasing delays via recognition and recall mechanisms. And then also growth in the hemispheres and corpus callosum. So between ages 3 and 6, the left hemisphere of the brain correlates with the burst in language skills during this time period. In the language domain, children should acquire the ability to comprehend and produce speech of increasing complexity to communicate with others. Activity in the right hemisphere grows steadily throughout early childhood, and it's involved in tasks that require spatial skills like recognizing shapes and patterns. The corpus callosum, which connects the two hemispheres of the brain, undergoes a growth spurt between about ages 3 and 6, as well as resulting in improved coordination between right and left hemisphere tasks. I have a quick example here about visual pathways I will try and get through quickly. So if you look at the picture I have on the slide, it is pictures drawn by girls ages 2 to 7. If you look closely, you can actually see the development of visual pathways reflected in these images as the pathways become more mature. So early scribbles and dots illustrate the use of simple motor skills. No real connection is made between an image being visualized and what's created on the paper. At age 3, the child begins to draw wispy creatures with heads, but there isn't much other detail. Gradually, the pictures get more detail and incorporate more parts of the body. So arm buds become arms, faces have noses, lips, and eventually eyelashes as well. Oh, and then one other thing about brain maturation. So smartphone addiction was something that I researched just a little bit. So this can actually damage the brain because the function of the frontal lobe in the brain, which relates to the ability to think, judge, and concentrate, is actually damaged through smartphone addiction. So higher smartphone addiction rates can predict problems in physical development like impairments in visual and hearing senses, obesity, body imbalance, just like there is also research about game addiction in children too. As far as motor skill development goes, early childhood is a time of development of both gross and fine motor skills, as you can guess. So early childhood is a time when children are especially attracted to motion and song. They're filled with moving, jumping, running, swimming, clapping, and anything. Every place becomes a playground. So these activities all help improve their gross motor skills. Fine motor skills are also being refined in activities like pouring water into containers, drawing, coloring, and using scissors. I remember doing this stuff in kindergarten a lot. So mastering cutting your own fingernails or tying your shoes takes practice and maturation. Physical activity is increasingly being recognized as an important determinant of cognitive and neural functioning in middle childhood and adulthood, in addition to its various other physiological and psychosocial benefits. So higher amounts of physical activity improve cognitive functioning, academic achievement in school-age children, and reduce the risk of age-related cognitive decline, dementia, and Alzheimer's disease. However, there needs to be a lot more research on all of that. And alarmingly, I know that schools are becoming more and more focused on test taking versus making sure kids have enough physical activity. I also did a little research on physical aggressive children, and basically they're at a higher risk of alcohol and drug abuse, accidents, violent crimes, depression, suicide attempts, spouse abuse, and neglectful and abusive parenting in the future. Wish I had more time to go into that, but it's very interesting stuff if you are interested. So I am going to quickly go through gender role development. There's a lot more information that I have on this that I won't be able to go through, so please let me know if you're interested. But as far as gender identity, typical stages, so around age 2, children become conscious of the physical differences between boys and girls. Before their 3rd birthday, most children can easily label themselves as either a boy or girl, and by age 4, most children have a stable sense of gender identity. I also researched theories of gender role development. I focused on the biologically oriented theories, as that's my focus with physical. There's also a lot of good cognitively oriented theories as well, but as far as biological goes, these are focused on the many genetic, anatomical, and hormonal differences between the sexes as providing the major basis for the gender role distinctions showed by males and females. So, for example, biologically based sex linked characteristics evident from early infancy may predispose boys and girls to favor those activities typically associated with their gender. At the same time, intertwined environmental influences can't be excluded, as we know. So, there's also biosocial theory that incorporates social as well as biological factors by stressing how early gendered socialization experiences combine with the impact of prenatal biological developments, particularly hormonal influences. A psychobiosocial model stresses the impacts that early experiences may have to the extent to which on the extent to which neural pathways develop in different parts of the brain. And just really, really quickly, as far as sexual development goes in early childhood, self-stimulation is common for both boys and girls during this time, which actually I wasn't super familiar with. I pictured that later in life. And curiosity about the body and about others' bodies is natural in this stage as well. And let's see here. And that's my references. Thanks for listening.